You know how I mentioned that there's three different positions, A, B, and C, for our solvent and our waste containers? So that's where, right here, where it says solvent selection right here. Yeah. So here, the first one says all A, B, and C. So that means you use three different solvents. Or you can use just A, just B, or just C. I'll just keep it at just A. Okay. So the next tab under line 1 is SPL1. Like I said, SPL stands for the injection port for the capillary column. Yeah. No, no, because so the TCD uses a packed injection port. It uses a packed column. So under line 2, we don't see SPL, we see SINJ. That just means packed, or an injection port for a packed column. Yeah. But yeah, going back to SPL1 for line 1, like I said, this is the FID injection port. Here is where you set your temperature of the injection port. Here's where you tell it if you want to run it in splitless mode, if you want to split off your sample. Next, so this is what's going to be different in regards to method parameters between liquid chromatography and GC. So right here, carrier gas. So we're using helium as our carrier gas. That's a fixed thing. For flow control mode, this is referring to how do you want to control your flow. There's three different items. We can either have it in constant pressure. So if we type in a pressure, what that information is telling the instrument is that you can adjust all of the other flow rate parameters as long as you maintain the pressure that I tell you to set it to. The second one to mention is column flow. So if I input 1.4 mils a minute right here for my column flow, then all of our other parameters will change accordingly based off of, heat, temperature. And then lastly is the constant linear velocity. So constant linear velocity mode is actually a patent that Shimadzu created. Now the patent's expired, so other companies are able to use constant linear velocity. We suggest using constant linear velocity because different carrier gases, of course, have different densities and different linear velocities. So if we are able to tell the software two major pieces of information, the first bit of information is what carrier gas we're using. So we're using helium. So the software knows the density linear velocity of helium. The second important information is that it needs to know the dimensions of the column that's installed in the instrument. Yeah. So exactly. So if we click the column button under line 1, right here we see this box says column information, SH-I-1MS. That's the name. Yeah, that's the model of the column, capillary column in here. Has the install date, has the max temp, has the length of the column, inner diameter, and the film thickness. The film is the stationary phase. Yeah. So as long as it knows these parameters associated with the column oven, and it knows what carrier gas you're using, for your sample flow, which flows through the column, then it'll be able to. Then when we're back here, it's going to keep this linear velocity and adjust all of the other parameters accordingly. So this is one bit of information that you will tweak when doing method development. Like I said, there's a lot of different parameters you can adjust. Like I said, pressure, flow, total flow, column flow, linear velocity, purge flow, split ratio. Since it's currently set to injection mode, here at the very bottom, split ratio is set to 39. That's a pretty high split. So like I mentioned earlier, the lower the number, the less amount of sample you're splitting off. So more samples then being introduced into the flow path. Like I said, this is just something to keep in mind where, if you inject 1 microliter, and we're either running it splitless, so we're not pushing off any sample, or we're only pushing off just a small amount of sample, you could possibly see our peaks saturated with the detector. That's whenever you want to come back in, increase that split ratio to a higher number until you can start seeing good peak shape and resolution. As for these options down here, high pressure injection and carrier gas saver, I would leave these as is. There's no need to mess with those. That's more of a headache than anything to deal with. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the column tab for line 1. So this is the capillary column. So we have the column oven set to 170 Celsius. This equilibration time, you can keep it at 0. So what this is saying is that whenever you click start run, even if everything is in its ready state, everything is green, if this was set to 3 minutes for the equilibration time, after you click start run, the instrument will wait 3 minutes to make sure that the column oven stays at that 170 Celsius or whatever number you put in there, 3 minutes straight before getting ready to inject the sample. Yeah, but like I said, as long as you equilibrate, like we mentioned earlier, there's really no need to have an equilibration time per se. Okay. So if you want to create an oven ramp time program, so like I mentioned earlier, that's whenever we start at one temperature. So in this case, we would start at 170. If we wanted to ramp up to 280, which that's what our detector is set to, that is where this column oven temperature program box over here comes into play. So this first line that doesn't have a number is the initial settings. So line number 1, let's say we wanted to increase at a rate of 10 degrees Celsius. Oh, whoops, sorry. Wanted to, let's see. 280. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so for example, what I just set it to is that essentially at time points, so whenever I click start run, the oven's going to be at 170, but right whenever I start the run, it's going to slowly raise temperature of 10 degrees Celsius until we've reached 280 Celsius. So then at that point, once it reaches 280, that runtime wants to change from 6 minutes to 11 minutes. So that's how our runtime was increased. So once it reaches 280, that's whenever you hit 11 minutes into the run is done. A lot of people, whenever they perform an oven ramp, whenever they reach their set temperature, they'll actually change the hold time to a certain time. Let's just say 5 minutes. Okay, so now we start at 170, and right when we start the injection, temperature slowly increases. Like I said, yes, and then once at 11 minutes, that's whenever it hit 280 degrees Celsius that we have right here, but I have a hold time set for 5 minutes. So that means from 11 minutes to 16 minutes, it's going to stay at that 280 Celsius.
The first segment of the curve was gradual increase in price.
Yes.
Then the second one is fixed. So how to set this in the how to make the increase gradual?
Oh, by inputting these parameters in right here. So by changing the rate. Yeah. So yeah. So the rate is how fast or slow. So the rate means, what is it? Is
so
it 10 degrees?
The first row has no rate, so for that reason it was increasing gradually.
Yes.
The second row has maybe.
So here, let me change this to 270. Change this back to 0. Okay.
The whole time.
Yeah. Okay, so
But it changed the whole point 0 and all of them.
yeah, so right now I have it set to where when we start the run, it starts at 170 and immediately starts increasing the temperature to 270 at a rate of 10 degrees Celsius a minute. that makes sense? Yeah. So if I change this to, let's say 15. Okay, so if I change our temperature rate from 10 degrees Celsius a minute to 15, now we see it reflecting our total program runtime change from 10 minutes to 6.67 minutes because we're heating it up much faster now. Yeah. And again, this column oven time program feature is good whenever you have peaks, or if your sample matrix contains analytes that have a lower boiling point. Like I said, the lower boiling point is typically what the column oven would start at. And then if you have any compounds in there that have a much higher boiling point, what you would do is, so let's say, let me see how to put this. Okay.
So that just keeps, it seems that our design is
Yes. Wait. I'm sorry. Say that again.
like 4 times just keeps the guy constant temperature.
Yes. So how I now have the time program set to for the oven ramp. Like I said, if you have a sample that, let's say you have two compounds that have a low boiling point, so those are going to elute first. After those two compounds elute, like I said, typically whatever those boiling point ranges is for those two compounds is what your starting temperature for your column is going to be set to. So once after, you'll see one peak maybe at 2 minutes, and then the second peak at 4 minutes of those low boiling point compounds. So now that those two low boiling point compounds have eluted off, now I want to get the rest of my compounds that have a higher boiling point off of the column into the detector. So that's why after my second low boiling point compound elutes, I have my oven temperature ramp started. Exactly. Yeah. Like I said, this is something to keep in mind, that if your sample matrix does have a compound that has a much higher boiling point, that's whenever, you want to increase that oven temperature ramp. And once it reaches that boiling point of that high boiling point compound, then it's a good idea to essentially tell the instrument, after I reach the temperature of that high boiling point compound, let's stay there for 5 minutes, just to make sure that compound with a high boiling point is completely eluted off the column. Because if we do not burn all of our compounds off the column, so that also includes compounds of high boiling points, then those compounds are still sitting inside of the column. So they may bleed into your next run. So that's why having a time ramp like this is beneficial, is to make sure that your low boiling point compounds elute first. And like I said, typically whatever temperature your low boiling point compounds start boiling at is where your starting oven temperature is set to, and then slowly increase the temperature of the column until we reach the point of that highest boiling point, and let it sit there for a couple of minutes. 5 minutes maybe, it would feel maybe 2 minutes should be good. That way, everything's kind of cleaned up. It's kind of like, when you're running the IC or the LCMS, if your last peak elutes at 10 minutes, well, you have a 20-minute run time. You have that extra 10 minutes of just pushing mobile phase through, just to make sure that no contamination, no gum is stuck on the column before you get ready to enter your net. So it's the same concept applies. Okay. So yeah, so that's how you input temperature ramps. I'm gonna clear it out. It's like I said, there's no need for us to have this right now. All right. Last tab under line 1 is FID. So temperature set to 280. We have the box checked for data acquisition. So if you don't have it checked, when you start your run, you're not going to record data. So always make sure you have it checked.